So welcome to my class of microeconomics for class 11th, and this is unit 5. And in this we are going to talk about who is a consumer, what is consumer behavior, what is utility, what is marginal utility, what is diminishing marginal utility, what is the relationship between total utility and marginal utility, what are the assumptions. We're going to do all of that. We're going to talk about consumers' equilibrium. And this chapter is basically a psychological concept. It is subjective. But yet, the economists have tried to make a theory based on numbers. So here we go. I just want you to have a look on what we are going to do. So, of course, we'll be doing the law of utility analysis, concepts of utility, then meaning and characteristics of utility. Then we'll be doing the law of diminishing marginal utility and all of that. We are also going to talk about, later on we'll be doing the utility analysis, and then we will also be doing what is known as this is a Marshallian analysis, and then we will be doing what is known as a Hicksian analysis of consumers' equilibrium. So that's based on ordinal utility. This is cardinal, that's ordinal. So on this, now let me just talk about what is utility. Now look at this. So, who is a consumer? Let's start with that. Yes. Who is a consumer now? You can make a note of it. So who's a consumer? A consumer is a person who buys goods and services for the satisfaction of his wants. And every rational consumer tries to get maximum satisfaction by spending his given income on various goods and services given their prices. So in this we are also going to talk about consumer's behavior. So how does he behave? So based on this characteristics of maximizing his satisfaction, he looks at his income and he looks at the prices, and then he tries to maximize his satisfaction. So that is the behavior. And another thing which is important is that the more a person has of a thing, the less he desires it. So we'll be doing that. That is known as, that's also consumer's behavior. So that is consumer behavior, and this is the oldest among the utility analysis. This is by Alfred Marshall. This analysis of utility, he was a British economist, and this is based on marginal utility analysis. So that is a consumer behavior that we were talking about. And then we are going to talk about utility. So it's all about utility. So what is utility? So look at this. What is utility? Now utility is the want satisfying capacity of a commodity. That is utility. And talking about utility, how is it measured? So again, utility is a satisfaction that is actual or expected, derived from the consumption of a good. So normally it is an expected satisfaction, because we generally purchase first and then consume later, and then we can make our decision based on that. So utility is a psychological phenomena. It is a feeling which differs from consumer to consumer. There cannot be a standard measure of a feeling. So that is why it is all subjective. But the economists use an imaginary measure called utils. So they express utility in terms of number of utils derived from the consumption of a good. But the problem remains. So utility, so expressing utility in terms of number of utils derived from the consumption of a good. So utils measure the amount of satisfaction that we derive from consuming a product or commodity or the utility that we derive from it. But what the economists have done is they have expressed utils in money units. For example, in India it is rupees. It is assumed that utility can be measured in terms of money. So if you have marginal utility of X, you also have it in terms of money. So marginal utility in terms of money, MUM. So for easy understanding, we generally assume we tend to assume 1 util equal to 1 rupee. So just an assumed value, and it's not a standard value, and it differs from consumer to consumer. The assumption is made for the sake of making the analysis of utility easy. So that's what it is. So now we're going to talk about what are the assumptions. So when you're doing the utility analysis, what are the assumptions? So let's just take the assumptions. So what are the assumptions for utility? One very important thing is that the consumer is rational. The consumer is assumed to be rational. Given his income and the market prices of the commodity, a rational consumer plans his expenditure so as to attain the highest possible satisfaction or utility. And it also assumes that the consumer has full knowledge of all the information relevant to his decision. That is, he has complete knowledge of all the available commodities, their prices, and their income. And the second important assumption is that utility is measurable. So according to the utility analysis which is given by Professor Alfred Marshall, utility can be measured, and it measures utility in imaginary units, as we've already learnt, is utils, and which are expressed in money units. Okay, so now for example, if I say a consumer is willing to pay rupees 20 for a unit of ice cream, then marginal utility of ice cream for that consumer is worth rupees 20. And the other assumption is diminishing marginal utility. So we have what is known as a diminishing marginal utility. So in this, what we have is that the utility gained from successive units of a commodity diminishes. So as a consumer gets more of it, his utility from that particular product keeps on diminishing. And another thing is that the marginal utility from money is constant. This is an important assumption of utility analysis, that the marginal utility of money remains constant during the period of consumption. So again, marginal utility of money refers to the worth of a rupee in terms of satisfaction from the consumption of a good to a consumer. So with that, in the next we are going to talk about what are the characteristics of utility.